Hi everyone! Welcome to my personal inquiry video, a deep dive into Guanxi and Renqing as an introduction to the Chinese business culture, which is different than the Western business culture. Chinese society has many traditions, and building sound networks and relationships is part of it. Today, I would like to touch upon the difference of trust within the Chinese and Western business culture, and from there on, I would like to introduce two Chinese concepts, namely Guanxi and Renqing. Guanxi refers to the system of networks and influential relationships which facilitate business and other dealings. Renqing refers to reciprocal favors. I'll explain more in a few minutes. We've talked a lot about social groupings, culture, values, and norms in class. Relationship building has directly to do with these concepts. I grew up in the Netherlands, but as I have Chinese roots, I've always seen two sides of the same coin. Relationship building is important in China as well as in the Western world. However, there are huge business culture differences as in China. Chinese behavior towards insiders and outsiders tend to be more extreme. You need to get into the insider circle in order to get the business done. I'll let you get a grasp of it by walking through the following three scenarios. So to get a bit more interactive, it would be great if you can answer these questions as we go through them. So the first situation is like this. You are starting a partnership with a Chinese business. What do you think will be the best way to build trust with your new business partners? A. Frequently give gifts and take your business counterparts out for dinner. B. Talk about business from the start and show your credentials. C. Build and maintain a relationship through shared contacts and regular visits. D. Eating hot pot at first dinner. So the most correct answer here is C. This has to do with building trust. When you build a relationship from a shared contact, you start the relationship as an insider. A here is not fully correct, as giving gifts and dinners might sometimes help. However, if you are being perceived as an outsider, the trust relationship will not be established. Giving gifts here might be seen as a bribe and declined. When I was interning in Shanghai at a Chinese law firm, I saw how my boss, the partner of the firm, was always leveraging on shared contacts with the new client. Dinners would only follow after establishing that insider's trust relation. Moving on to the next situation. A client of yours invited you to play golf and paid everything. A week later, this client tells you that his or her child has difficulties in getting into the primary school of your neighbor. What is the best way to maintain a good relationship with your client? A. You refer your client to the school's website. B. You share the email address of your neighbor to the client. C. You contact your neighbor, explain the situation, and ask for a favor. Then you put your client into contact with your neighbor. D. You tell the client that you feel sorry and agree that it is indeed very difficult to get into your neighbor's school as the reputation is high. So the best way here to show that you put effort in helping your client is C. You need to make sure your neighbor is willing to help, and then you put the client and your neighbor into contact. It is good to follow up a bit afterwards as well to show your care to the client. B. Only forwarding the email address might come across as a bit cold, as WeChat would be a better and closer way of communication. So this might work in the Western world, however, in China it might be better to do it differently. I actually encountered this situation myself. Me and my dad were invited to play golf in Shanghai by a business friend, and then later he asked whether my dad could introduce one of his friends to him for business purposes. Of course, in the Netherlands, we also network, by dinners and golf as well. However, the insiders and outsiders culture is more nuanced, more tricky, and more extreme and complicated in a sense in the Chinese business culture. It is a necessity, a must. Without Guanxi, without this relationship, you end up nowhere in China. Then to get back into the story again, your neighbor helped your client's child to get into the school. But now your neighbor tells that his daughter actually has trouble with finding a job. What do? A. You suggest that your neighbor's daughter should have a look at the university's recruitment portals. Companies often post vacancies there. B. You compliment your neighbor by stating that he has a huge network himself. Finding a job for his daughter should not be a problem for him. C. You compliment your neighbor's daughter by saying that such a smart girl like her can figure it out on her own. As parents, we should not worry too much. So A, B, and C are all very subtle ways to say that you're not offering help. Or maybe you actually know yourself that you cannot be of help. So it is a subtle way of saying no. D would be a warm-hearted good response. As your neighbor helped you last time, it is time for you to pay back your favor now. This is also known as Renqing, the reciprocal favor concept. So all the three situations before show that, depending on the cultural background, relationships are built differently and maintained differently. Trust is developed and defined in different ways. It is undeniable that trust is important in the business development in both China and in the West. However, the main differences lie in how people from the West and China work towards building a trusting relationship. Trust is usually defined as a positive expectation that the other party will act in honest and benevolent ways, reducing fear that one may be exploited. Generally speaking, in the West, the default is trust. So that means that I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and consider you basically trustworthy until you do something that breaks our trust. In China, the default tilts more toward distrust. So that means I only award you my trust after you've proven yourself worthy of it. So in China, you build trust first. That is definitely something that I've seen in my environment. Only when trust is achieved, you can do business. So I was having dinner with the director of KLM Alliances, and he was actually also pointing on this. He drank a lot of baijiu, Chinese liquor, to gain trust and give face to the Chinese counterparties. In the West, it might be different. Westerners feel more comfortable conducting business and building trust at the same time. The insider's trust does not need to be established first. But why does this difference in trust default exist? In the West, we have a more individualistic culture. People tend to take a more active approach in building relationships, and defaulting trust has become the norm. China does not have an individualistic culture. Neither does it have a collectivistic culture per se. Rather, China has a relational culture. Only when one is certain that a new relationship will not threaten the interests of one's closest relationships, then trust will be given. The primary function of trust in the Chinese context is to protect and establish a feeling of safety first. And that feeling, or to say certainty, can only come from people that are known within the network. That's why Guanxi and Renqing are two key concepts in the Chinese business. In China, it pays to put effort in the building and nurturing of strong business networks. Building Guanxi is the golden rule for success in China. Guanxi is a concept that describes networking and the basic dynamic in relationships. It literally means in Chinese, connections or relationships. But it is actually more than that. It is how things get done in China. Guanxi is a system of networks and influential relationships which facilitate business and other dealings. As you might have heard, nothing is directly decided on the table. The Chinese way of doing business is not spontaneous nor rushed. In order to make a decision, they look at the history of that deal, including the people that are involved in the deal from the beginning. That is why it is very unlikely that a decision is made right away when doing business with a Chinese partner. This is why you need to know their system first, to learn the practical way of doing business in China. A personal example where Guanxi was important is my search for an internship in China. I will not state the name of the company, but I was looking on the recruitment portal for vacancies of this multinational company. There was none, actually, so I couldn't find any vacancies on the website. So I was sharing my concern with my dad about finding this internship in China that is very difficult. And my dad said that he might actually know a partner of that company I was looking at, and he sent a WeChat. So the next morning, I was called at 9 o'clock in the morning by the HR, telling me that she would like to discuss the opportunities with me. So this is the power of Guanxi. Therefore, it is crucial to learn the skill of building Guanxi and turn that into one of our capabilities. When you have built the Guanxi, Renqing comes into play. If you want to maintain relationships in China, you have a requirement. That is Renqing, referred to as reciprocal favor. If you ask someone for a favor, this favor needs to be returned eventually. If you fail to repay, that is not okay. So the more you ask, the more you have to pay back. This ends in a never-ending cycle of Guanxi, as shown in the neighbor situation example I showed before. You might have also seen, heard, or experienced that Chinese people are always fighting for the bill after a lunch or dinner. At least my parents always try to pay the bill. The underlying reason, next to the fact that you want to show your generosity, is also not to owe 人情. All favors need to be paid back sometime. To conclude, this personal inquiry has touched upon the topic of trust, Guanxi and Renqing. Taken together, Guanxi translates to network, connection, or relationship, and forms the basis for all social relationships in China. Chinese people cultivate and maintain close Guanxi relationships and leverage them for information and favors, known as 人情. A good Guanxi is essential to accomplishing anything in China, for Chinese and non-Chinese alike. So to end with a few recommendations for the people who are interested in doing business with Chinese counterparties. First of all, the safest approach to do business is to ensure that you know and trust your negotiating partner, because a contract in China does not always provide a guarantee. And secondly, make sure to build your Guanxi. If your Guanxi comes from just one person, your deal could collapse if he or she quits. Finally, don't forget that Guanxi cuts both ways. Your business partner will expect you to return any favors granted, so think about when you accept a favor. Thank you for your time. I really hope that you enjoyed this personal inquiry, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions.